Today, Lebanon is on the brink of disaster, with its economy failing, its political scene marred by intrigue and corruption, all the while foreign powers meddle in its internal affairs. This is a far cry from its golden years in the 1950s and 60s, when the capital, Beirut, was referred to as the Paris of the East. In order to understand its present chaos and instability, we have to delve into the country's demographics and how that affects its political makeup. Many of these issues are rooted in the Mount Lebanon Mutasarrifate era, lasting from 1861 to 1918, and the subsequent French Mandate until the 1940s. These two periods combined to bring about the emergence of a modern Lebanese nation-state. Lebanon experienced great changes in this time, both good and bad, with hundreds of thousands moving abroad, not to mention a famine that wiped out a chunk of the population. At the same time, Beirut emerged as an economic hub in the backdrop of a cultural renaissance taking place. The Levant came under Ottoman control with the conquests of Sultan Selim in 1516. For the next 400 years, it was subservient to the will of Constantinople. The land of Syria, or al-Sham as it's known in Arabic, was split into various provinces. Modern-day Lebanon was mainly split between the Tripoli and Sidon eyalats. Ottoman power was mainly felt in the major cities, Damascus, Aleppo, and Tripoli. In the hinterlands, it was tribal chieftains that maintained order. As long as these chiefs provided their Ottoman overlords with regular taxes, the Sultan in Constantinople seemed content with this tax farming arrangement. In fact, Mount Lebanon was the archetype for this model of governance. The rugged region was ruled via local leaders, firstly the Ma'an family, which was of the Druze ethno-religious group, and then the Shahab dynasty, which eventually converted from Sunni Islam to Maronite Catholicism. Even in this small region, Muslims, Druze and Christians lived together. The Levant has been renowned throughout history for its great deal of diversity. Different creeds, languages and ethnicities converge to produce a real melting pot. This convergence can create breathtaking displays of culture, but it can also remind us of how brutal humanity can be. In 1860, a civil conflict broke out between the Druze and the Maronites, which soon spilled over to Damascus and other Levantine areas. Up to 25,000 people were killed, most being Christians. As Lebanon's history has shown since, when sectarian conflicts erupt, its multiculturalism almost becomes a detriment because the nature of the fighting becomes so personal and passionate. 1860 happened because the Shahab conversion to Christianity in Mount Lebanon had destabilized local power dynamics. The Druze, specifically its feudal chieftains, had seen their power dwindle at the hands of the Maronites, who were being preferred in the Shahab administration. Even when the Ottomans tried to subdivide Mount Lebanon into Druze and Maronite segments in 1842, it failed to stem the rise of tensions. 1860 has a lot of parallels with the Lebanese civil war of the latter 20th century. Fundamentally, it was tensions between different Lebanese groups as a result of domestic power relations between Christians and Muslims changing, and these tensions were exacerbated by international or regional political developments. The 1860 conflict definitively ended when a French expeditionary force of 6,000 soldiers landed in Beirut. Napoleon III, leader of France, invoked his country's right to intervene in the protection of Christians within the Ottoman realm. In the aftermath of what was likely the first humanitarian intervention, an international commission agreed to establish the Mount Lebanon Mutasarrifate in 1861. Its leader was to be a non-Lebanese, non-Turkish Ottoman Christian administrator. Key cities such as Beirut, Sidon and Tripoli were to be excluded, despite French desires to have as expansive an area of influence as possible. British and Ottoman concerns helped to contain French designs. These episodes of violent discord as well as economic difficulties in the rural areas forced many Lebanese to immigrate abroad. Their move was facilitated by developments in naval technology, with steamships making journeys far shorter in time and cheaper. Hundreds of thousands of Lebanese, mainly Christians, ditched the difficult terrain of the countryside to come to port cities like Beirut. From there, they went mainly in two directions, one being the New World, the USA and various South American countries like Brazil, and the other to nearby Middle Eastern countries. From the latter group, Egypt became the preferred destination. The Ottoman province had been subdued by the British in 1882 and was a hotspot of intellectual, cultural, and economic activity. There emerged in Egypt a Lebanese community that was cosmopolitan and influential. This affected Egypt, where the publishing industry was dominated by Syrian and Lebanese migrants. Al-Ahram newspaper, a mainstay of Egyptian journalism for the last 150 years, was actually set up by Salim and Bishara Taqla, Lebanese migrants to Alexandria. In fact, much of the Arab world at the time was experiencing a renaissance, now known as the Nahda. This was a cultural movement intent on charting a new course for the Arab world within modernity. From it sprung most of the ideologies that would come to dominate 20th century Middle East: nationalism, secularism, and even Islamism. Lebanese thinkers were very well represented within the Nahda: Ibrahim al-Yazigi, Georgi al-Zaidan, Butrus al-Bustani, and Rashid Ridha, to name a few. Those that had migrated to the Americas developed their own literary movement, known as the Mahjar, with Khalil Gibran being the most famous of the Mahjari writers. The goal was to sustain the Arabness of the migrants in their new settings. With the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the introduction of nationalism from Europe being supported by a rising printing press, ideas around identity were becoming increasingly important for both the diaspora and those living within Lebanon. Much of this development was fueled by an explosion in literacy rates. Schools began emerging in villages across the Mutassarrifate. Those that wanted to pursue a higher education had ample opportunity in major cities like Beirut, where Western Christian missionaries sought to spread their religious influence by establishing numerous schools that are still the leading academic institutions inside the country, with the American University of Beirut and St. Joseph University being the best examples. In the second half of the 19th century, Beirut was one of the fastest growing cities in the world. Its cultural development went hand in hand with its economic growth, as the port city became a hub for international trade. In 1888, the city's importance was recognized by Ottoman authorities when it was promoted to a vilayat, the first level administrative division. By the turn of the 20th century, Beirut was handling up to 10% of international trade within the Ottoman Empire. Chief amongst its exports was silk, which would be transported to Europe, mainly France. In addition to its naval links with the rest of the world, Lebanon's interconnectivity was aided by a French-built railway that linked Beirut to Damascus. Whilst Beirut boomed, Mount Lebanon was characterized during the Mutassarrifate era by a rural exodus. In this period, it is estimated that up to a quarter of the population left the area to seek a better life elsewhere. Migration became such a big deal that by the beginning of World War I, money being sent by the diaspora to Mount Lebanon became one of its main sources of income. Most left the country, but many relocated to nearby coastal cities, thereby having a massive impact on the demographics of the country. For instance, Maronites who left Mount Lebanon for Beirut and established themselves were able to ascertain more power, something that would become crucial once the French moved in after World War I. In 1914, Europe broke out into war. The Ottomans joined the Germans to fight against the British, French, and Russians. Considering Mount Lebanon and cities like Beirut had attracted a lot of European attention in recent decades, the Ottoman army moved in to assert their authority over the region. Jamal Pasha, one of the 3 pashas that ruled the Ottoman Empire during World War I, was sent by the government to the Levant to coordinate Ottoman efforts against the British in Egypt. Conscription and Turkification policies were introduced, whilst the basic law of the Mutasarrifate was disregarded, making Jamal Pasha a hugely unpopular figure amongst the Lebanese and Syrians, who referred to him as As-Safa, the bloodshedder. To confound matters even further, various factors converged in 1915 to cause the Great Famine of Mount Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands died from starvation as the Allies blockaded the Eastern Mediterranean in order to weaken the Ottoman economy, whilst a swarm of locusts demolished what little crops remained. The famine-like conditions soon led to epidemics, as the lack of nutrition and hygiene encouraged the spread of diseases such as dysentery and typhoid. Mount Lebanon's population was cut down in half by what the Lebanese refer to as the Kafno. These conditions would remain until the war ended in 1918. By the end of summer 1918, the British forces were advancing from Egypt into Palestine, and so the Ottomans retreated from Mount Lebanon. The flag of Sharif Hussein's Arab revolt was hoisted in Lebanese cities in October 1918. But these celebrations were cut short just a few days later when the British and French landed in Beirut and dissolved the Arab government. In the aftermath of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, Lebanon and Syria came under the mandate of the French. Sharif Hussein's son, Faisal, was quickly expelled from Syria, although the British would make him king of Iraq. Greater Lebanon was established, with Mount Lebanon constituting the bulk of its territory, as well as the incorporation of key cities such as Beirut, Tripoli, and Sidon. France's rationale for Greater Lebanon was for it to serve as a safe haven for Lebanese Christians, but the inclusion of some of the coastal cities made the demographic makeup a lot more complicated, as these cities often had large Muslim populations. The French mandate's favouring of the Maronites was an open secret, and a census carried out in 1932 put the Christians at a narrow 51% majority. Thus, Lebanon's political system as a multi-confessional state with a Christian ascendancy was enshrined in the National Pact of 1943, through which each of the religious groups was allocated a key position in parliament, where there would also be a ratio of 6-5 in favour of the Christians to Muslims. That same year, Lebanon gained its independence from France. But the political structure the French built for the Lebanese essentially guaranteed them to ever-present conflict, since it was all dependent on demographics, which are constantly changing. Just 5 years later, with the establishment of Israel and the influx of over 100,000 Palestinian refugees, many of them being Sunni Muslims, contributed to the destabilization of Lebanon's internal politics. All this would spill over into the Lebanese civil war of the 1970s and 80s. The tensions behind Lebanon's multi-confessional political structure still loom large over the country's fate today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As usual, thank you to my patrons for your continued support. Until next time, peace!